One of the interesting copes I saw in regards to Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom was, oh, I don't know about this art style, guys. Like, it's the same art style we saw in Link's Awakening remake, right? For the Nintendo Switch, which came out in 2019. The fact that so many people did not recognize it, I think, is a really strong indication of just like what kind of person is coming out like immediately criticizing the game. Someone who's not familiar with Zelda releases on Switch, the Zelda IP in general, Grezzo, who have been working on several Zelda games over the past decade or so, right? Again, the the narrative regarding Echoes of Wisdom is interesting because people are trying to rally against it the way they did with Tears of the Kingdom, but it's not going to work, honestly. Like all the things that they tried to throw at Tears of the Kingdom, the alleged idea that like they were the claim that they were rehashing everything and that it was entirely just the same game all over again. You know, they're trying to do that again with Echoes of Wisdom. I saw some people like try to claim this is like the same world as A Link to the Past, even though it clearly isn't. I've um I've seen people like try and say that like the game has been casualized, even though it clearly hasn't, right? Like again, we've only seen like a single trailer, and yet people are making these like really weird assertions about this game. It's kind of unbelievable to see if you haven't been following along with some of the back and forths in the community, but it is a ridiculous, right? Like it's appalling to me that so many people are trying to do this thing where first of all they're pretending the direct wasn't good, even though it was great, right? Uh, and secondly, they're trying to say that we're not going to get any more Nintendo Switch Directs. That's another thing that's been coming up lately is that like, oh, this is the last Nintendo Direct ever. Okay, but I remember you saying the same thing back in 2022 and 2023, right? Like every June we go through this process. We're like, oh, this is the last we'll ever hear of the Nintendo Switch, and it continues to outsell the competition every single time, right? I don't think this time's any different. Like, I expect to see a Nintendo Direct in September, to be completely bluntly honest with you. So, like, to see so many people, like, rally, like, in favor of, like, criticizing Nintendo, condemning games for looking low budget, attacking Mario and Luigi. I've seen people, like, try to do that. Like, oh, Mario and Luigi, nobody cares about that. Like, it's consistently been the best-selling Mario RPG series, right? If it wasn't for Alpha Dream going bankrupt, we would have had another Mario and Luigi on Switch already, right? So again, people pretending that Mario and Luigi isn't some major deal are delusional, and now we have Echoes of Wisdom, a Zelda game that came out far sooner than anyone thought it would, right? Like I remember like when Tears of the Kingdom came out, people were saying that like, oh, that's gonna be the last game on Switch ever, but now we're getting another Zelda game on Switch with a completely different aesthetic, with a completely different style, with completely different gameplay mechanics, and you're seeing people try to write it off as low effort like garbage, right? And we have lots of other things coming out as well, but those are the two big ones that I'm looking forward to. Brothership and Zelda, and both are coming out within the next 4 months, right? So why exactly are people so adamant that these games are not going to live up to any kind of expectations, right? That these are just like filler releases until Nintendo releases the new console. Like I'm sure they don't have a date set yet, but the way they're acting is that like I legit think they're gonna try and push this narrative that like the next Nintendo Direct in September is gonna be focused on the Switch 2, which is gonna release in March of next year, and like Metroid Prime 4 is gonna be like a launch title for that. Like again, that's absurd considering everything we know. Like I expect we're not going to see us. hear about a new Nintendo console until 2025 at this point. I don't think we'll get it until the end of that year, right? Considering just how packed the release schedule is and just how many of these big releases are coming out. Again, like people are complaining about the ports and things like that, but like people are really underestimating just how well this stuff is doing, right? I can tell you that Luigi's Mansion 2 is doing really, really well. People are really, really enjoying it. Paper Mario did well. You know, there were lots of really successful games this year, right? And people are really trying to do this thing where like, oh, Nintendo's on the way out. It needs to stop. It's embarrassing. People need to grow up.